It was February 24th, 2022, and the sound of air raid sirens echoed across all of Ukraine. This was the day that Russia arrived. And this is the story of when those first sirens went off, to getting out to the suburbs of the city, to seeing something fall out of the sky that night, to driving through the streets of Kyiv at 4 o'clock in the morning running 100 red lights, getting my family to safety. This is the story of February 24th, 2022.
On February 24th, 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine.
The largest invasion of a neighboring country in Europe since World War II.
It started before dawn. Ukraine woke to explosions around the capital, Kyiv.
Explosions and air raid sirens ringing out here in Kyiv and cities across this country as Russia launched a full-scale invasion on multiple fronts in the early hours of this morning.
I remember waking up that morning and my wife kind of just like burst into the room. She'd already woken up and she just was like shaking me awake, like, Kyle, wake up, wake up. And, you know, me being who I am, of course, I'm like sitting there, you know, what woman, like, what are you doing? Those are sirens at the police car. Like, what is the big deal? And then as I started coming to my senses, I realized like those were air raid sirens and Russia was here. I remember I was just so mad because we had just been in the west of Ukraine I was on a business trip to Lviv, and we were right there at the border, 30 miles away. And I was like, I think we should leave. But my wife was pregnant and our dog was still back in Kyiv, Ukraine. And so we went home. And I remember just being so angry in that moment because we had another life that we were about to bring into the world. And now we were going to have to be fighting for our own life. But I realized I need to get past that anger like quickly. So at that point, 7 in the morning, I don't remember exactly what time it was. I opened up my phone and I'm not joking. There's like 100 messages there. Just, are you okay? What is happening? Just everything going on, just chaos. Found the message from my parents, shot a text off to them and said, hey, we're okay. We're going to take action. Like, try not to worry. Obviously, of course, they're extremely worried. So first thing we did, try to call her parents. No answer. So basically decided at that point we were going to leave the city center, which was obviously a huge potential target, and go out to the suburbs to my wife's parents' house. Managed to get out there, gasoline lines, at all the gas stations going for kilometers. And I'm just sitting looking at all this saying, it's going to be days before we can actually get out of this country. So basically decided like, we'll wait here for a few days, let everything die down, and then we'll go, on the weekend after 3 or 4 days. I didn't really feel like we were in any major danger. But all night, all evening, as we're sitting at her parents' apartment, the air raid sirens are going off. We're hearing rumors on Twitter, like this is when the next huge bomb is going to be going off, and spent a good portion of that evening down in the basement of, her parents' apartment. Didn't sleep much all night, obviously, just sitting there, wondering what the hell was going to happen. And I remember all night that there was this tram, kind of like the one right here in Budapest that's about to come by, and it would make this sound. It was this kind of just whoosh, steady whoosh, and it sounded like a plane. But the only thing that made it feel okay was that at the end of that, there would always be this little click, click as it made the turn. So around 4:30 in the morning, I heard that, whooshing sound, and I'm like, oh, here's the tram again. Except then there wasn't the click. And about a second later, something just absolutely exploded in the sky. Every window in the apartment turned bright red orange. It was like seeing the fireworks on the 4th of July. And at that point, of course, everybody in the apartment saying like, we're going down to the basement. And I said, you know what, honestly, if this is the way it's going to be, then I'd rather be going out looking at the skyline on the 15th floor than cowering in the basement. After that, thankfully, everything was okay. There was an apartment about 1 kilometer away that ended up, losing basically its entire side. I believe a few people were killed in it. So a little bit closer of a call than you'd ever actually really want to live through. And at that point, I decided, this is the time to go. Packed up the car, and at about, 5:30 in the morning at that point, we were driving through the streets of Ukraine, heading towards the western border. And I just remember, I was going probably 120, 130 kilometers an hour, not a single car on the road, lots of tanks on the road. I must have run 100 red lights in 30 minutes, just absolutely flying. And at that point, the adrenaline had taken over. Like, there was no fear. It was just a matter of like getting everybody out to safety. And it was a long day. It took about 16 hours, I think, to get actually to the border. And then to go those last 10 miles was almost another 2 days. We ended up having to camp out in the car. Ended up, everyone was high stressed, almost getting into fights with people because people didn't understand that we were not taking the car out. So we were trying to jump the line and basically be able to just walk across the border and trying to explain to everybody, we're only trying to drive the car up to the front. And we didn't know how far exactly the walk was. We didn't know what provisions or supplies were available. And then finally, about 2 days later, we made it to the border, actually managed just to stand in line, and then took about 6 hours to get across the border. And then when we crossed into Poland, I just remember just that wave of relief that just absolutely came over me. And it was just crazy. Like there's really no other way to put it. Living through something like that really gives you a perspective on life and, how quickly things can change in the world.
And while I'm lucky and my family is safely out now, there are millions and millions of people who are living through this very horror every day. That feeling of just shock when your whole life has been ripped apart and taken from you is not something that goes away from you easily. And I don't want to sound like a victim here, but there's millions of people living through this every day. What I couldn't do for more than a couple of days. And they're the ones that are truly suffering. So give them all your thoughts and prayers and good feelings, and Slava Ukraina.